Hey there, welcome to the CCS After Hours podcast. This is Kenny.
And this is LaughingMan.
And today we're going to be tackling something that I think has been on quite a few people's minds since E3, back in June. So let's just get straight to it. Sony Worldwide President Shuhei Yoshida believes that this generation's length has stifled the creativity and that we are actually seeing a decline in consoles. And just going off of that article, he says that the consoles are declining and that things aren't selling as well as they should be, in his mind. And then LaughingMan, I actually found something that's actually quite interesting. I looked around some more just to look at more stories about this, and I came across a Forbes article that I think would be troubling to a lot of hardcore gamers, that the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 could be the end of video game consoles as we know it.
Well, how long did the PlayStation 2 last and still manage to sell 120 million consoles?
That actually lasted
12 years, I thought, something like that. It was a ridiculously long time, and it was still a popular console. It was very inexpensive to buy, and they were still making ports of stuff like Lego Pirates of the Caribbean and whatnot.
Yeah, it was a worldwide titan. It wasn't very powerful in terms of what we see today, but the thing about that is that it still managed to last a very long time, and it's basically the greatest console that's ever been made.
Yeah, as far as definitely up there in sales. But it doesn't matter how long a console lasts. It matters what the console has as far as gaming. You can't blame the length of a console on the failure or success if the game has really shitty software, unimaginative software, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. You can't. It's like Stephen King trying to pit a rhetorical decline in his career on the fact that he's been writing so long, instead of the fact that his ideas may be getting repetitive and stale.
Right. Exactly. Stagnant.
Yeah. That would just be, and again, that's like Nintendo blaming the decline in maybe sales on Mario games, or the image of Mario, on the fact that he's been around for so long, and not the fact that they just make the same game over and over again.
That's so true. I'm sorry, Nintendo fans. I am a fan ever since childhood, though, but Mario is in a rut.
Yeah, people thought Sonic was, but at least he's starting to climb out just a little bit, eking there. But Mario may be the next one to fall in that hole. But anyway, I wanted to basically back up the veracity of the Sony president's statement.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be damned if I can remember his name, but
Yoshida.
Yoshida, yeah, I'll just say Yoshida because I can't pronounce his first name.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I just can't. But I wanted to back up the veracity of his statements, so I looked around on the internet a little bit, and I found a Forbes article. And I think this may be troubling to a lot of gamers, but again, quite a few people may already be thinking about this, that the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 could very well be the end of the video game console as we know it. And I found a good quote from this article that I think sums it up. The game industry is evolving in such a way that some analysts believe that there won't be a PlayStation 5 or Xbox 2, quote unquote. Will there be a next generation in about 8 years? It won't be in the shape and form we know today with consoles, says Peter Warman, CEO of research firm Newzoo. It could be something you plug into a TV and gives you access to all the stuff. You might want an Xbox dongle for exclusive IP that works with other screens, but I don't think it will be a box like what we have now. So
very, very possible though. But I think the biggest thing about the console wars in late is that they have, honestly, about maybe 95% of the same content.
Yeah.
The Xbox 3 and the Xbox 3, sorry.
There we go. They sort of mashed together.
That's just it. They mashed together so fucking much that I can't even get the names right anymore. BioShock, all 3 BioShock games are on both consoles. Battlefield on all 2 consoles.
Yeah, really the only exclusives, quote unquote, that we could really chalk up for just an example what the Xbox 360 had. Some exclusives were the Left 4 Dead series and some other Valve games, but that's only because they couldn't get working on the PS3, and you can't really even call those exclusives because you have them on the PC too. So what's the point of that? But
back in the days of you know, the Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and even up to like Nintendo 64 and the rise of the PlayStation and the Sega Dreamcast, there were distinct titles. I mean, very few titles actually crossed over between the consoles, and that was why people bought consoles. You know, that's why they're real console wars, is because, you know, they're like, oh, you know, my Mario beats your Sonic, or, you know, my side-scrolling beat 'em up beats your side-scroller beat 'em up, and it's that kind of uniqueness per console that really drove the sales of those consoles, and that's why you end up buying, you know, your Nintendo 64 and a PlayStation, so you have the best of both worlds. Here nowadays, with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, the differences in titles is almost so freaking minuscule. I mean, you have Final Fantasy on both consoles, Castlevania on both consoles, Metal Gear Solid's coming to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, I believe. So there's nothing to say, okay, console 1 is better than console 2. That's what's stifling the industry, I think, is the fact that people just need to buy one console and they're done.
yeah, I mean, that's it now. You know, you're absolutely right. There isn't a point where people used to, you know, go, hey, I have a Super Nintendo and you suck for having a Genesis.
Yep, I remember those days quite fondly.
Yeah, I bet you do. You know, little LaughingMan could come over to his friend's house and be like, hey, can I play on your Sega Genesis? You know, I only have a Super Nintendo, but hey, I want to play your games.
Your version of Mortal Kombat has the blood code, fuck.
Exactly. You know, and that's what made those days magical, is that, you know, there really was a difference. But nowadays, you know, I think that quote, and I think that Forbes article really does resonate. You might just have a little dongle for Xbox that has the exclusive IP of that to plug into your screen, but that's about it, you know? I mean, consoles are getting outdated, but it's because the industry, just like Hollywood, I might add, is turning into a fossil. I mean, the people who are running it just don't want to move forward, and it's hurting. It's hurting the industries because there's just that stifling, you know, there's just, I guess the best way to put it is just that everything is being stifled because of the fact that people don't want to change policies. People don't want to, you know, actually advance in the way that they're doing things. There
is a noticeable loss in creativity in the gaming industry. Sans the indie game movement, I believe that's what's going to save the gaming as a whole. Because, I mean, if you look at like stuff like Call of Duty and Battlefield, no offense, but they look like the exact same games. They play like the exact same games, and they sell millions because, you know, they are good games. But it's just that, like Hollywood, the game industry is falling back on what sells and not really trying to push forward with what is new, unique, and fun.
And that's the problem. I mean, actually, that might be a really good segue, actually, because, I mean, just looking at everything, you know, what is the biggest difference that you've seen in the gaming industry, you know, just in the past 5-10 years?
Well, you just have to look at the Dead Space series, which is the best fucking example of what's going on. You have Dead Space 1 and 2. 1 was revolutionary in a lot of ways, and genuinely, you know, a really good horror game. I never played 2, unfortunately, but 3...
2 was okay.
3 comes along, and it totally ruins what made the original Dead Space originally unique and fun. It turned it into an FPS, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, Dead Space 2 was okay. I mean, I'm in the opposite boat of you. I didn't play Dead Space 3, but while a lot of the same elements were in Dead Space 2, and I still got very creeped out in a lot of respects. I mean, you had to go back onto the Ishimura, even...
You know what's on that Ishimura.
Exactly, but you had a lot... I mean, but there were a lot of changes that I think, you know, wound up having the game series transition into Dead Space 3, such as Isaac Clarke being a snarky, nearly bald dude, you know, like, kind of like what you see with a lot of other gritty action game heroes, you know, they're snarky assholes and they have buzz cuts. I mean...
Yeah, the Kratos syndrome.
Yeah, exactly, but, or the Nathan Drake, you know, syndrome. I mean, you could... I mean, really, you know, you just have the same kind of archetype now. But actually, what I was actually trying to segue into with the statement on, you know, what you might have noticed within the last 5 to 10 years of the gaming industry is the prices. You know, the prices of everything has exploded.
That's probably true, but you also have to consider that there's inflation involved. Oh, you're talking about the actual development costs. I thought you meant just how much a game costs.
No.
I
I meant the development costs.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, because I was thinking. Drop my mic. Because I was thinking of you know, like $50. $50 has always been about right for, you know, a video game. And back when I was a kid, and now, you know, it's about 60, and that's just inflation. But you're right, the development costs are through the roof. I mean, people spend more on some games than they do on movies.
Yeah, and I mean that's just ridiculous. I mean, the Xbox One, it's nearly $500, I think, is what the cost will be.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I mean, generally, a lot of the news with what was going on with the 360 and the PS3 when those came out was that they were so expensive to make that they were actually manufacturing each console on a loss, you know, and they had to make up with selling games.
Yep.
You know, with this generation, with what we're doing now at the end of this generation and going into the next one, you know, just to actually pull up a number, you have huge franchises like Call of Duty. You know, you have huge franchises with Call of Duty bringing in over $1 billion a year with how popular they are. And you have every single other game trying to compete with that, you know, so with making everything flashier, bigger, better, you know, more explosion-y, games are costing so much more to make because they're trying to compete with that with a big budget, just like you would see Hollywood movies trying to compete with bigger, better budgets.
And the worst thing is that they're shelling out all this money on these massive IPs, and when they invest that much money into a game, it has to be one that they know will sell, so that stifles creativity.
Yeah, and I mean, that sort of ties back into our previous point, honestly. It's with that, but it's like this. Here's an interesting point of comparison. You know, what has been the most successful type of movie in Hollywood in the past couple of years?
Probably, like, I'm guessing comedy, right?
Oh, I mean the comedy. I mean comedy to some degree, but you don't really see that many.
Because I was thinking of Adam Sandler movies, how some god-known reason they keep on making tons and tons of money.
Well, yeah, I mean there's the Adam Sandler movies, but
you're thinking more like action or something, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking more to the point, you know, action and sci-fi or sci-fi action, which is what we're seeing now. I mean, you have some mega hits like Pacific Rim and The Avengers, which were both fantastic movies. You know, they were fun, but then you have, you know, a lot of generic conspiracy-driven action movies where, you know, oh, we're supposed to go in for this job, but then it turns out that the government is behind this and want to silence you for getting in their way.
Yeah, and that's just mirroring the public sentiment at the moment. All the Jason Bourne type stuff, right?
Yeah, and you just have a lot of bland action movies that are completely forgettable these days, and you have a lot of bland science fiction movies that are completely forgettable, yet they are costing more and more to make, and you see more and more of them because that's what studios are comfortable with making. Then you see the gaming industry, and you see how a ton of FPSs are coming out, and that's about it. That's all you see. Just FPSs, science fiction FPSs, or military FPSs. It's the same thing.
Yep, and if a game doesn't have some type of multiplayer, it's sunk.
Exactly. I mean, you see a lot less. You just see a lot fewer creative games coming out, you know, for big budget consoles these days because they're too risky. They're just far too risky, and I mean that's
so sad because some of the best games you'll ever play are the indie developed ones. I mean, ones that are developed by a couple of, you know, genuine gamers who, you know, about maybe my age or something, about 28 or something, that made a game in their basement based on something like the developer of Shovel Knights is heavily inspired by Mega Man. And who's that one dude that you said was highly inspired by Banjo-Kazooie?
A Hat in Time.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. These are games made by actual gamers, and they're made on a shoestring budget, and yet they do reasonably well because they put in the creativity.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly what that's what we're talking about. You know, it's You know, you can have a lot of creative games that cost just a shoestring to make. I mean, that's perfect, but I really don't.
Most NES games were made by like a handful of people, like probably like no more than like 10. And those are a lot of those games still hold up.
Yeah, they really do.
I mean, like they're remaking DuckTales because sorry, Kenny. They're remaking DuckTales, which I'm looking forward to because it was a genuinely fun game, and it still is. I mean, just update the graphics, but the gameplay itself was phenomenal. And a lot of these companies just aren't putting in that type of creativity. They think that if you throw money at the problem will go away and it'll sell millions of copies, and that's not necessarily the case. A lot of gamers are sick and tired of certain genres because they've been overdone.
Yeah, that's what they are. So I think just to wrap this up, I mean, you see that. I mean, you just see a lot of problems in the gaming industry. You know, that I think is going to kill the consoles. I mean, you have just no creativity anymore. I mean, you see a lot more than the indie gaming scene than you do in actual AAA games. So that's killing it because less and less people may get interested in that. But I think the biggest issue is the cost. It's ultimately going to be the cost. You know, these gaming companies are going to bankrupt themselves because...
Yeah, I mean, it's unfeasible for any game company, publisher, not to release their game on every single console.
Exactly. I mean, it's just there's just no point to consoles anymore.
Exactly.
I think.
And that's where the problem lies. Is the reason why you have console is because number one, it's easy to plug in and play. No configurations for like all the PC hardware specs that are literally a pain in the ass. And the fact that certain consoles have certain unique properties or independent properties, have unique titles, and that's the only way that we're ever going to see consoles get back on their feet is when they say, okay, the BioShock games are exclusive to Xbox and all the Call of Duty games are exclusive to PlayStation, but that's not going to happen with these massive budgets in place. It'll never happen.
No, and that's just it. You're not going to see the AAA gaming industry get any better with what it's seeking to accomplish until you do cut the budgets, until the people behind the scenes, who are running everything, get smarter about what they're doing. They're not going to change right now because they don't see a point, because they think they're earning a lot of money, but eventually they're going to bite themselves in the ass, just like what Hollywood's doing. Even with how big movie Pacific Rim was, that was just so expensive that it wasn't considered a mega success, even though it's a fantastic movie.
Which I still have yet to see, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, even with that movie being fantastic, it didn't get the unreasonable amount that they're thinking about, like $1 billion in box office money. Mm-hmm. The budgets are going up, but the ticket sales are going down.
Yep.
I see the same thing happening with the gaming industry, honestly. The budgets are going up, but people's willingness to buy games are going down. Even with $60 and even with inflation being called into account, with the way that the world market is right now, and just, the rut that, at least with average Americans find themselves in, I'm not willing to spend a lot of money on $60 games. I'm just not.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I don't do any reviews really anymore, is because there's not really any games that I want to buy day one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you found Deadpool to be so disappointing. I mean, that was
God, I spent $50 on Deadpool, and that was the biggest fucking pain. Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it was a discounted game, but even then, more and more people are finding themselves unwilling to spend that much money.
Right. I mean, like that's kind of why I started making the move away from consoles and went to Steam, and I've been doing most of my gaming on Steam just for the fact that the price isn't so much an issue on Steam. I'd be willing to pay $60 if there's a new Mortal Kombat game on Steam or on PlayStation, whatever. But the thing with Steam though is I have more freedom with what I do with my games than I do on consoles, and that's one area I wanted to kind of touch up on, is that console makers are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yep.
It's not necessarily just the gamers who are kind of getting tired of certain things or the price or whatever. It's the console makers themselves fucking themselves over, because the amount of restrictions and DRM is absolutely insane on a console. On Steam, I can just take a game over to I can go over to my parents' house and install Steam on their computer, and it'll have all my games there. I can play them, and since it's PC, most games will work just fine right out of the box.
Yep, same with my girlfriend, just go over to her gaming PC.
Yep.
I have a Mac, so I can't play a whole lot of games on Steam, but she has a PC, I could log on to that,
Yep.
and I could actually play PC games on it. There's just a lot more options open, It's not easy anymore to be a console owner, You have to transfer your account over, you have to insert a series of passwords. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not like you can just take a memory stick like from the N64 and take it over to your friend's house and plug it in. No, you can't do that anymore, and that's really what's fucking the entire thing up. Not just saves, I'm saying the restrictions are really fucking everything up. You can't take game saves over to your friend's house. You can't transfer content from one PlayStation 3, in my case, to another PlayStation 3 very easily, because like my PS3 died and I can't get my data off of it. I'm fucked. You have to agree to tons of terms and conditions just to be able to get online anymore.
Yeah, so I think just to wrap up this whole thing, there are just a lot of ways that the gaming industry is screwing itself up right now, and I think that Forbes is on. I think that.
Well, to me, this is something that we need to cover, though. This is what we need to wrap up. This is our solution to the problem that we need to. We can make it quick, but we need to explain that this is what consoles need to do again. They need to go back to the basics. They need to go back to the amount of freedom and focus on games that the previous consoles used to have. Like PlayStation 2, it didn't have nearly the DRM restrictions that the DRM restrictions that the PlayStation 3 has, because PlayStation 3 has more features that take away not only from the gaming aspect of the PlayStation 3, like Netflix and whatnot, but it's just such a fucking lockdown system that I cannot stand it anymore.
Yeah, so I think, honestly, I think the gaming industry is shooting itself in the foot. So, what it can honestly do for itself is a lot of things. Indie gaming is the future, and I think AAA developers can learn a lot from indie games in that, you don't have to have a ton of features on your games to actually have fun. We know this. If you want to just make a multiplayer game, then do it, but don't spend such an exorbitant amount of money on it. Not only that, but if you actually cut down the costs of AAA games, or maybe change the way you're doing things, in some respect, with cutting back on DRM and all that stuff, making games more accessible to people again, maybe pirating wouldn't be such an issue. Prices would probably go down for games because they would not cost so much to make. Consoles would probably not cost so much to make if you weren't just concerned with making everything bigger, better, and prettier, but sacrificing quality and imagination in the process. And honestly, stop trying to compete with Hollywood. You're your own thing. The AAA gaming industry is not Hollywood. It doesn't have to be anything like Hollywood. It has to be its own thing. If it tries to compete with something that has bloated budgets and is suffering itself, then the gaming industry is doomed to fail. This generation will be the last one.
Yep.